My name is Brianna Mobby. I'm the Program Officer for Women, Peace, and Security at the Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice at the University of San Diego's Kroc School of Peace Studies. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I see more and more people joining us. We have an amazing event lined up for you today as we celebrate 25 years of the Women, Peace, and Security field, the highs and lows, the successes and challenges of this field. The field was officially formed in the year 2000 with UN Security Council 1325, and we're going to hear from a range of amazing women peace builders today about how that agenda has served them or not served them, many of the tensions within the field, and what we should be looking to do as the field moves forward for the next 25 years. As an introduction, the Kroc IPJ here at the University of San Diego, our work is to co-create learning with peacemakers, learning that is deeply grounded in the lived experience of peacemakers around the world, made rigorous by our place within the university ecosystem, and to do research that can be practically and immediately applied by peacemakers to end cycles of violence. We're very proud that since 2002, we've been running our Women, Peace, and Security program, most notably through our Women Peacemakers Fellowship and our Women Waging Peace Network. And I'll just highlight that this month alone, we've published 2 different reports, one from each of those programs. So earlier this month, we published a report looking at women's role in mitigating and addressing election violence, as 2024 was the largest election year in history. And just this past Monday, we launched a report from our Women Peacemakers program looking at women's leadership in diaspora peace building. As we close out the event, I'll have a QR code for you so you can check out those reports. But we are certainly celebrating this anniversary with a lot of learning and publication and sharing the priorities and work of women peace builders. I'm so pleased at the amazing speakers we have to share with you today, and so I won't waste any more time on me. I'm happy to introduce our opening speaker, Muna Lukman. She's the National Coordinator for Inclusion with the UN Envoy's mission to Yemen, the founder of Food for Humanity, and a past Kroc IPJ Women Peacemaker Fellow. A globally recognized peace builder, she has led community-led mediation and water security initiatives benefiting over 120,000 families and has been honored internationally, including with the Courage and Leadership Award from Hillary Clinton and Georgetown University. Welcome, Muna. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you very much, fellow peace builders, sisters, colleagues, and friends. It's an honor to return to the Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice, a place that helped shape my conviction that peace is not an event, but a process born from people. As a proud Kroc alumna, I carry with me the belief that real peace begins with those who suffer the most and when they are allowed to lead the solutions. Let us first begin by honoring those who came before us. The courageous men and women who 25 years ago drafted UN Security Council Resolution 1325. Let us salute the peacemakers who lost their lives from Yemen to Sudan to Syria to Gaza, from Libya to Afghanistan, those who believed that peace was worth dying for. 25 years on, we gather not in celebration, but reflection and renewal. The promise of the Women, Peace and Security agenda endures, but its strength depends on our courage to revive its spirit, not just repeat its words. Resolution 1325 was never meant to be an elite conversation. It was born from the courage of women who refused to accept that war is destiny, from grassroots peace builders who proved that peace is not imposed, it is built. We are still here, bridging divides without budgets, leading without titles, believing when belief itself feels like resistance. Today's wars no longer begin with gunfire. They begin with broken systems, corruption, and silence. They are fought through proxies and non-state actors devastating civilians and destabilizing entire regions. Communities are torn apart by despair, landmines, and snipers, yet our peace frameworks remain built for the wars of yesterday, for ceasefires between governments, not the survival of people trapped in these realities. We cannot end 21st century wars with 20th century tools. Real peace is not negotiated by those who hold weapons only. It is built by those who keep life going when everything else collapses. It begins quietly in the courage of women who sustain their communities when the world looks away, For decades, the world has asked, where are the women? But women were never missing. They were advancing truth and reconciliation in Colombia, where survivors turned pain into justice. In Guatemala, indigenous women led post-conflict healing and defended lands and rights. They led reconciliation in Sudan and South Sudan, keeping dialogue alive across divided tribes. They defined erasure in Afghanistan and Myanmar, teaching in secret schools and documenting abuses. And they resisted oppression in Iran, standing publicly for freedom and dignity. Across continents, women have been the first to respond to conflict and the last to give up on peace. For too long, the world has applauded women's participation while denying their power to decide. Participation must mean influence, access, and authority. Women as decision makers, not symbols. Women are not peace actors, they are peace itself. And we must believe what women say. We must stop imposing external narratives that distort and erase the truth on the ground. The realities that women live and the warnings they give are not anecdotes, they are evidence. We cannot speak of participation without protection. This year, Yemen lost Iftihan al-Mashhari, a leader of integrity whose targeted killing was a warning. We ask women to lead and speak, but when they do, we fail to protect them. Protection must be a pillar, not a paragraph, backed by law, accountability, and justice. Let us confront perpetrators, not with hatred, but with truth and accountability. Every dollar spent on war is stolen from a classroom or a clinic. Every shipment of arms delays recovery and creates cycles of violence. Peace cannot be imported. It must be built with those who live its absence. Let this be the era of women envoys, mediators, and negotiators. Let peace tables reflect those who live the cost of war. Let them echo with truth, justice, and reconciliation. And let youth lead the next generation of peace, redefining leadership as compassion and responsibility. Because when women lead, peace becomes human-centered and not power-centered. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those amazing opening remarks and a powerful reminder that this work keeps going, even as budgets are cut, even as we face a challenging environment in terms of risks for these peace builders, in terms of an international system that isn't as supportive as it should be. Thank you so much for reminding us that it's not just a paragraph on paper, it's about real action and real support and real solidarity. Thank you for being with us today. I'm very excited to introduce you to our panel for this event, who are going to talk to us about how their work fit into the Women, Peace, and Security pillars. So traditionally, Women, Peace, and Security focuses on protection, participation, prevention, and response and recovery. And we're going to talk about how has the field actually supported this work in reality? How have we thought about who a woman peace builder is? How have we thought about what building peace actually means? So I'm very proud to invite three panelists to join us. I'll introduce them one by one. Our first is Manjula Pradeep, who is a human rights activist from India with more than 3 decades of work to promote marginalized women's leadership, inclusion, and participation in peacebuilding, justice, and governance. Welcome.
Thank you.
Our second panelist is Grace Nakarija Luanga, who has 24 years experience in advocacy, gender-based violence prevention and response, promotion of maternal and sexual reproductive health and rights, climate justice, and gender transformation and response. She is the founder and CEO of Chapter for Empowerment and Rights Uganda, and previously worked with Mifumi and the Center for Domestic Violence Prevention. Welcome.
Thank you, Brianna. Happy to chat with everyone.
And our third panelist is Diana Palmar Uriana, who is a lawyer, journalist, and human rights advocate. She focuses particularly on Indigenous peoples, climate justice, and civic spaces. Welcome. Manjula, my first question is for you. Your work supports marginalized populations and seeks to strengthen women's, including young women's, leadership. How has the WPS field offered opportunities for your work or opened doors?
Thank you, Brianna, for this very important question. For me, the Women, Peace and Security framework has been both a professional space and a deeply personal and moving journey, a way to connect local struggles for justice with global movements for peace. For me, the work which I am doing of women, peace, and security has been a meaningful space because it recognizes that peace is not only about ending wars, but also about ensuring justice and dignity in everyday life. My work for over 3 decades has focused on the most discriminated communities who are Dalits, the tribals, and the minority community who are facing multiple layers of violence from home to the public sphere because of their faith, because of their caste, because of their ethnicity, their gender, and also the layers of poverty which encompasses their social identity. The WPS field gave me a framework to bring their realities into global conversations. I think this was very important for me when I was part of the Women Peacemaker program in 2011 because it opened doors to connect my own reality, my lived reality, to the international audience to say that caste based and gender based violence are also questions of peace and security. Because the framework of peace and security is different when you're talking about a place where there is armed conflict or there is military rule. Through Women, Peace, Security, I could engage with global feminist movements and highlight how structural discrimination undermines peace in communities. I got an opportunity also to reach out to as many women activists from the marginalized communities across the country to build and amplify their leadership. I think for me, leadership is something where you talk about peace and justice, and I think peace comes from when the women from the marginalized communities they take over the the torch and then they start discussing around how to negotiate, how to build alliances, and how to rebuild a broken humanity, a broken society. In my own work of WAVE Foundation and the National Council of Women Leaders, a national network bringing across women from the marginalized communities, we build the leadership of young women so that they can lead the justice movements, not only in their villages or in their districts, but also nationally and globally. Women Peace Security also give legitimacy to the work which I am doing by affirming that leadership by marginalized women is essential in building sustainable peace and democracy because they have been facing injustice for centuries. Finally, I would also say that women, peace, and security opened a pathway for solidarity. I think it's very important for us who are at the margins that we encompass those who have the privilege and the power to show solidarity and to stand with us because there is a need to share strategies with other women peace builders and also learn from them the peace building processes in other parts of the world and to bring visibility to those who are often invisible in their policy spaces because there is no dialogue and no negotiation when you talk about representation of women from the marginalized communities. So this work which I have been doing, it has helped me show that peace is not possible without equality. I think equality is the most essential aspect when you talk about peace, and equality is not possible without addressing caste, gender together, and the intersectional layers of structural inequality. I truly believe that the strength of the women, peace, and security agenda lies in how deeply it listens. I think we somehow we negate the fact that the women also need to be heard. Women from the margins need to be heard. They also have voices. Their voice have to be listened to by those who are in the policy making, who are the law bearers. And I think the women at the margins, their definition of peace, their definition of justice also need to be understood with their lens of intersectionality because their courage, their struggle, their wisdom, their knowledge is so essential and important because they are rebuilding their communities who are facing day-to-day struggle of discrimination, violence. And I think this is the time of last 25 years I would what I have contributed within my own country and in South Asia is looking into the rights of marginalized women and how do I encompass them with my own tools of assertion of knowledge and also strengthening their leadership and courage. Thank you, Brianna.
Thank you so much, Manjula. And I think it's so fascinating how you're talking to us about the continuum of violence, right? And how we think about different levels of violence, different types of violence intersecting. When the Women, Peace, and Security field started, it was much more focused on kind of formalized armed conflict. And I think as a field, we've really expanded the conversation using a feminist lens into understanding that continuum of violence and how violence happens in the home, in the community, at a national level, at an international level. And so I think here on this panel, we're going to see how that looks in different spaces. So thank you for that. Grace, my next question is for you. Grace, your work spans many sectors, from supporting survivors of violence to addressing climate change to understanding intergenerational change. And I'll make a plug here that Grace was part of some research that we did on intergenerational peace building, in case you want to take a look at that. So Grace, how do we take these lofty WPS principles, as Muna mentioned, the words in the paragraph, the words on paper, how do we take these big ideas and actually start to make them real at the national level, at the local level?
Thank you so much, everyone. On our side, we embarked on development of an intergenerational framework. This has continuously enabled us to dig deeper into the hidden intersectionalities. And one of the hidden intersectionality is working with others. We learned over time that even when we are promoting issues of women, peace, and security, we cannot achieve this on our own. So we need the private and public sectors in terms of institutions. That's why now we embarked really working with government institutions. And here we were very, very strategic on which direction do we take. So having listened in to the survivors in the host and refugee communities, one of the main issues they told us about was economic empowerment, because they said, even if you talk about policies, regulations, but for us as women refugees, as women defenders, policies are good, but since most of our governments are not committed, it will take us a very long time. So continue with your work on policies, but we want livelihoods to be reinforced. And if we are taking on these livelihoods, we need also support. We need to tap into government resources. So on that note, that is when we embarked on promoting gender responsive budgeting. Because on our side, we did not have resources to give government. After all, we have not even given a lot to civil society. But we are reminding government that we are taxpayers. It's your responsibility to take care of women and girls and everyone. So where are the budgets? If you can find budgets for roads and markets, why not budgets for women, especially in the area of livelihood, education, and health? So in that, we had to partner again with other national and international organizations like MIFOMI, FAWE, that is Forum for Women Educationists, GIZ Uganda, which is the German Technical Cooperation, in terms of consultancy work. Because we convinced our partners, we are like, we don't need funding. We are not begging or asking for funding if you don't have it. But if you already have funding, can we support, integrate the best practices, what we know works, and ensure that communities, especially the host and refugee communities, are accessing many of these resources? And the partners agreed. So from time then, we are promoting gender responsive budgeting by enhancing capacities of governments. We are doing analysis of district development plans and budgeting, but we are also following up on implementation. You said you would give so much, where is it going? And we really work with the teams, the leaderships of government, to ensure that they are also part of the monitoring, so that this process informs the next year's financial planning and budgeting. So along the way also, gender-based violence became or was recognized as a stumbling block. Even when the refugees get, for example, livelihoods, nobody is checking the issues of the intimate partner violence. Nobody is checking out if how are women and girls benefiting away from numbers, because in most cases they were telling us so many women, but when you go to interface with the women, you find that the women are only signing, but the actual resources, it is the men again benefiting from the actual resources, One man has 4 wives. So all the 4 wives get the money. For example, these are loans. Again, it's the man who is like taking care of everything. The chairperson of the group has 4 wives in this group, has the mother there, the aunties, the sisters. So at the end of the day, the gatekeepers of power, even in livelihood, continued to be men. So because of that, we introduced the conversations about gender transformative approaches. We encouraged and motivated the leadership to see that let us move away from numbers. Let us go into deep. If you gave a loan, how is it impacting on women and girls? Then after that, this country, Uganda, has so many policies and laws. We were very deliberate to look at what are these specific policies and laws that impact on our catchment area and our beneficiaries. So we selected the Domestic Violence Act. We selected the national guideline to end child marriage and teenage pregnancy, and also the school re-entry guidelines, because most of the young girls told us that, look, because of the transition, for example, from South Sudan to Uganda, I got a number of challenges and I conceived, but now I'm happy to go to school. So we had to also look into that Ugandan guideline that allows girls to go back to school despite giving birth. So we explored that for both the development and host and humanitarian communities. And for us, that has worked very well. So to get the learning to the national level, we had to look up to Forum for Women Educationist chapter to ensure that we are encouraging girls to write the story. Their stories, so that instead of us again speaking as activists at parliament, we might never be listened to and believed. We are getting young people to write their stories. But also along the way, what we learned is that much as the people are settling, sometimes where they are settling, there are issues of climate crisis, especially flooding. So that meant that, again, beyond conflict issues resolution, we had to bring on board issues of managing climate crisis. And again, we had to use the very ambassadors, the people we have worked with, to really raise awareness about climate crisis and the whole scenario or conversation with government. But this is still work in progress. And at the end of it all, we realize that the needs of our beneficiaries are multiple. So what we decided to do is to continuously strengthen establishment of multi-sectoral referral networks. So these referral networks cut across gender-based violence response, sexual reproductive health rights, livelihoods, leadership, and empowerment. Because again, many of our beneficiaries are interested in leadership. So we felt that, okay, if we can also build their skills that way, and at the end, we are having a number of community-based groups led by refugee women and girls coming up to really also take on small activities where we cannot reach, and sometimes when we are not there with them in their homesteads. Thank you so much. That is what I can say for now.
Thank you, Grace. And I think you've highlighted the importance of working together in coalitions or working together between different types of actors. Oh, excuse me, my light went off. I'm being too still in my office here. And I think the WPS space has put a lot of effort into building this infrastructure of international, national, local cooperation, though I think we've seen varying levels of success. And to your point about the importance of doing the work to build national action plans that are effective, to build in budgeting programming that is gender responsive in the budget itself, thinking about those positive peace elements of the economy, livelihoods, education, and health, I think are so important for how we think about actually building peace in the long term. Thank you. Diana, my next question is for you. Your work focuses on the territorial and environmental rights of Indigenous peoples. The WPS field has expanded over time, as some of our other panelists have spoken about, from a relatively small vision of what peace is to a broader view. Are we thinking broadly enough? Do you find WPS to be a useful framework for the work that you do?
Yes. Hey, hello, everyone. Happy to be talking with all of you. I think that yes, because traditionally, women, peace and security file has focused on conflict prevention, participation in peace process, and protection from violence. But in the current state of affairs in the world, it is necessary to have a new way of looking conflict and peace. And in today's world, I think that it is really important to reflect on how does conflicts looks today. And it does sense in my work with indigenous people from Colombia and Venezuela. And we have identified certain key drivers for climate-related conflicts. Because yes, it is important to acknowledge that women are harmed by conflict in ways that are distinct and horrific in some ways, and that must be stopped. In my work with indigenous women, I have seen the links between women and the traditional territories. And when we are studying at rural communities, traditional communities, community affected by extreme weather events, for example, that is example how droughts, floods, and heat waves undermine livelihoods, especially in rural and coastal areas. Other key drivers of these new waves of conflict in the world are energy and transition projects without justice. Energy transition is happening in the world and it's happening really fast. Renewal projects are being imposed in certain territories without prior consultation or a fair compensation. And this is often described as a new green colonialism that is affecting indigenous and traditional communities. Other key drivers that I think that is important to mention is the extractivist expansion through mining, through wind fire, that is displacing communities and damage ecosystems. And this is also a global competition for strategic resources, like the rare earth minerals that are being so spoken in the current context of the world. This creates a new geopolitical competition in the world, and where are the places that these rare earth minerals can be found? Traditionally are being in rural communities or ethnic communities in this global south. It could be in Brazil, Amazon, Colombia, Amazon, Venezuela, Amazon, or in Sudan, for example. Along in this framework, we have with institutions and we have erosion of the civic space. What is happening? These big power structures are silencing the voice of grassroots communities. In the context of this new order in the world, it's most necessary that ever to listen to the voice of the people that are in the ground, that are being affected mainly by these main of conflicts today. We need projects that implement free or prior and informed consultations. We need to document better what are the populations that are being most affected by displacement and forced migration. We have also violence and criminalizations against environmental defenders. There is increased attacks against indigenous leaders and land defenders. and Colombia and Brazil are sadly the countries where this main conflict is happening with the environmental and forest defenders. And also the socioeconomic transitions, I think that is a subject that we have to look in for the next 10 years, because there is going to be like job losses in fossil fuel industries and more access to green employment. Who is going to be the people that are going to have like the capacity to work in this access to green employment? I think that it is something that we have to analyze better, especially in Colombia or in Brazil, because of the installation of these renewable projects here. It's taking a lot of portion of land, but also it will represent a big number in the economic development of these countries. So in that sense, how I think that the women, peace and security agenda framework is valuable, but we must keep broadening. In this framework have to move to embrace ecological security, political ecology, territorial integrity, and the protection and cultural heritage of indigenous people. And for indigenous women, defending territories is defending the life itself. They are connected with the land, they understand the land. And for them, the land is not a source of extraction, but it's a source of life. In that sense, it is important to include climate justice and equality in understanding the new ways of promoting peace and security for women in the world. By integrating environmental and territorial divisions, we make it more inclusive, intersectional, and responsive to the real conditions that are affecting women in ethnic and indigenous territories. Other thing is, I think that is important, is the notion of development. Since a Western vision, development is most related to economic growth or bigger buildings or bigger roads. For some indigenous and traditional communities, the development lies in the health of the river, for example. If we have a river that is not polluted, that is rich, and so I think that it is important to see the presence and the harmony of this indigenous cosmovision integrating in the peace and security agenda for women. So I think that the pathways are definitely more human rights focused on the process that are developing communities and participatory and co-designed projects.
Thank you so much. Thank you for highlighting the risk of doing this work and the need for the next 25 years of this agenda to think even more broadly and more creatively about what really building peace means. To our audience, we're going to have time for Q&A. Feel free to pop your questions in that Q&A box. In the meantime, I have one more question for each of our panelists, and it's an unfair question because I'm going to ask you a huge question that we could talk about for years, and I'm going to ask you to each answer it in 2 minutes, which is absolutely unfair of me, and I recognize that. But thank you for trying to keep to our tight time limits here. The WPS field has, received many critiques, most of which are very fair, right? It's built on tensions. Within the field, there are people who disagree with each other, who believe peace and justice mean different things. There's a wide body of critique thinking about the tensions between a top-down mandate versus bottom-up work and priorities, how we think about what peace really means, whether militarization should play a role in building peace or not, how do we think about a broad spectrum of gendered experiences, And how do we take both a short-term view for what has to happen now, but also a long-term view for building peace over generations? So how have you felt these tensions, or perhaps other tensions I haven't mentioned, in your work? And how do you hope the WPS field will grow or change in the coming years? Manjula, will go to you first.
Thank you, Brianna. I think we as women peacemakers and the WPS field has always, for me, has given me some kind of inclination about what should I do in my work. But this field has also carried deep tension, as what you said. And I myself have also felt that tension in my work. One of the strongest tension is the tension between global frameworks and local realities. Much of my work is grounded in the struggles of marginalized women in rural India mainly. Women whose everyday daily lives are marked by caste, faith, ethnicity, patriarchy, and poverty. The idea of peace is not abstract. It means safety in public spaces, freedom from violence, and dignity in daily life. Yet, global WPS discussions often center on formal conflict, as you said, or militarization, leaving our these structural forms of violence it out of the entire discourse. I also feel that the tension between inclusion and representation, who represents who. While we talk about representation of women, but many times the voices, as I said before, of peace building and the leadership of the marginalized women, is it recognized or not? That's a big question. Many women with whom I work who are also peace builders, but you hardly see them. Their voices are never been heard or they are not represented adequately in the global space. So, what I feel, Brianna, is that for the future, I hope the WPS field becomes more intersectional, as we said in the previous question as well, and also rooted in lived experiences. I think that's very crucial, which embraces broader definition of peace and security and recognizes that justice and equality are the foundation of sustainable peace. So for me, I think the next 25 years must listen more deeply to voices from the margins and more from, and that's how we can talk about moving from policy to practice. And as I said, that Asia is one of the continent which is going through so much of conflict across the continent, and many times women just become uh, sufferers. They are voiceless, and I think this is the time that next 25 years, how we are going to build the leadership, how do we listen to them and also include them in the voices from the margins. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Grace, the same question to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. On my side, given the experiences we have gone through, we strongly envision and look forward to ensuring or even motivating or even encouraging or even lobbying whatever action we can take to make sure that women and girls lead the processes of peace, justice, and even programming on gender equality. Because in many situations, people sit on tables, in conferences, and actually make decisions for them. But at the end of the day, you realize that what has been planned is good, but does not resonate with the lived experiences of the beneficiaries or the women and girls affected by conflict. And even at the end of the day, people just receive, like they're just accepting to take whatever envelopes and packaging is there because there are no options. And even the issue of feedback. How do we ensure that we get feedback, even if people interventions are being implemented? But to the end users and beneficiaries, how do we get feedback from them so that we avoid reinventing the wheel or even causing more harm and damage to them? And then to our governments. For us moving forward, we have the whole regional global policies and instruments, But again, where is the face and the voice of the woman and girl affected in this whole area, in this whole intervention? Then before you know, huge sums of monies are allocated, but the woman down there does not really understand the breakdown. So before you know, we have seen scenarios whereby the salaries, the infrastructure takes a lot of resources, but the actual support to build voice and agency is lacking. So in the next 25 years, for us, we envision if we can reach a level whereby as planning, whatever is taking place, resource mobilization, can the voices of the beneficiaries be heard, and even not just being heard, but can they be incorporated and even right up to implementation? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. And a reminder to the audience, please send us your questions. Diana, the same question to you.
I told the same as my previous college. I think that there is a big gap between the local realities of ethnic and traditional communities, and in the other hand, like these thought institutions and frameworks that are often very difficult to access, and to create a bridge between two worlds. As for me, that I work with grassroots communities, there is a lot of barriers regarding language, regarding economic sources of technical knowledge. That is in the case of indigenous women and leaders that build peace from the ground. And I think that in that sense, it's also important to mention that the framework of the peace, women, and security agenda requires to be broadened to an ecological and climate justice perspective. This is something that is happening in the communities, that is happening in the traditional territories. The concept of peace must be evolved to the not only the political side, but also since a spiritual, ecological, and relational perspective, peace with the humanity, but also peace with the earth we are living in. And also I will mention the issue of representation in these global institutions. I think that it requires to be more listening and oriented toward women in the margins, farmers, healers, activists, indigenous leaders. They possess a powerful and traditional knowledge, daily practice of care that can be really strong, like to empower and to build a resistance for peace, since the grassroots communities to the global advocacy, or since the wisdom of the communities from the institutional actions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think you've touched on a key challenge in WPS, which is there's a disconnect between the reality, the lived experience of peace builders, and often what's happening at the international or national levels. We recently published at the beginning of this month our annual survey of the Women Waging Peace Network, and we asked our network members, how well do you feel that national level WPS programming and policy supports your work? And 61% said not well at all or just somewhat well. For folks that thought it was extremely well, it's 1%. So there's a clear disconnect, as you were saying, Diana, between the real work that happens and the planning that happens. And to highlight Grace's previous point, the need for gender responsive budgeting, the need for better dialogue and coalition building, in making this work better connected. I also want to highlight another finding from our report that is connected to some of the things we've spoken about today, are that women peace builders are fundamentally a threat around the world. 65% of our respondents have received at least one threat in just 2024, not over the span of their whole career, but just in the year 2024. And we're seeing it particularly egregious in some regions of the world, with the Americas, for example, getting worse over time. So I'll highlight, we're facing a dark challenge at the moment for women peace builders. We have just 2 minutes left. I haven't seen too many questions in the chat. We have one. So we're going to take our one question in the chat, and then we're going to turn it over to our closing speaker. What have been the opportunities and challenges of integrating WPS into security institutions and policies, and in particular, working with men in the field? Manjula, you kind of had an immediate look on your face. Would you like to take it? And then we can see if we have time for others.
I think it's a very important and very pertinent question when we think about what is the participation of men and how do we work with men in creating opportunities for peace and security. And I think involvement of women from the margins and even the marginalized man. I think the patriarchy is so strong within the marginalized communities as well. And many times when the peace building processes happens, it's the men who lead the processes. Because they think that women don't have the understanding of how to build peace. Although these are the women who are building peace in their own families, in the communities. But I think at the larger level, when there's a conflict, like when there was a big conflict in the Manipur state of India recently, in 2 years back, I could see that how the church-based organizations, which are led by men, they did not allow the women to speak up and to also do the negotiation aspect as well. And I was just feeling so isolated. And when I was all there alone, speaking with them, dialoguing with them, but they didn't allow the women to speak up. So the possibility of involvement of men should be the condition to be put by the women, whether what kind of participation we need from men. Because men, when they come into the peace building processes, they take away all the space of women. And I think this high time that, because men are the one who are creating conflict in the world, so we also have to see who are the men, what kind of men they are, and what has been their role in building peace in the society, and even what their role they have in the policy making or in the security institutions. If they have the gender security sensitivity, if they understand the issues of the women, then we will say that yes, the men would be allowed, but the condition should be kept by the women, and even how much space is to be given to men should also be decided by the women, because women are the most impacted by conflict. And I think this is the time when women should speak up and say that men should listen to them, and they should hear what women wants to say when they talk about peace and security. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect note to actually wrap our panel up, to highlight again the importance of listening to women peacemakers for what they want, for how they want to be included, for what discussion should be at the table. So thank you. Thank you to our wonderful panel. Thank you to Manjula, Grace, and Diana. And now we're going to turn to our closing speaker, Dasha Nesha Shurgi. A native of Turkey, Dr. Shurgi is a renowned expert in international peace building. As a distinguished professor of practice of the Kroc School, she taught graduate courses in post-conflict peace building, human security, global governance, and the international system. Thank you, Dr. Shurgi, for being with us. You're such a pillar of the work here at Kroc. I'm so pleased to have you close out our event with us. Oops, sorry, just a moment. Let's get you unmuted. Sorry about that.
Dr. Neela, you have to turn on your mic. Yeah. Nekla, sorry.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute you and it's not letting me. Sorry, just one moment. We'll figure it out.
Oops.
There we go. Perfect.
Except I got kicked out, I think.
Nope, you're still with us. We see you.
Oh, I don't see anybody.
You're our star. You're spotlighted, so we can all see you.
All right, that's fine. I wanted to start saying that my co-panelists have been incredible in terms of sharing some amazing insights with us about the Women, Peace and Security agenda as it has affected them on the ground. In 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I've learned so much. So I want to thank each and every one of them, because the Women, Peace and Security agenda is a huge agenda. They brought so many dimensions to our attention. I would also like to thank you, Brianna, for inviting me, and to the Kroc IPJ for this opportunity to reflect on the Women, Peace and Security agenda with this remarkable group of women peace builders. Kroc IPJ's Women Peacemakers program will soon be celebrating its own 25th anniversary. Like the Women, Peace and Security agenda, the Women Peacemakers program has been groundbreaking over more than 2 decades. It brought the voices of women from around the world to help enhance our understanding of the realities of peace building in conflict contexts from the perspective of women, not as victims of war and violence, but as indispensable agents of peace. Muna, Manjula, Grace, and Diana have already given us a grounded understanding of the impact of the WPS agenda on their own work in different contexts. Having worked internationally most of my life, I will simply add a few comments about the challenges that await us as we look into the future. The WPS agenda emerged in the heady, hopeful days at the dawn of the 21st century. Like other ambitious new international norms and policies, like the responsibility to protect the Rome Treaty, the ICC, International Criminal Court, WPS was part of a larger international agenda for a more inclusive, collaborative, and peaceful world. Its accomplishments, as well as its shortcomings, have been amply documented. It's undeniable that WPS brought new energy and new actors and partners into the peace and security field. It also served as an invaluable link between international commitments and local realities. We need to build on those achievements. Yet, the ground under our feet has been changing radically in the last few years. There is rising militarization, increased conflict, heightened tensions, diminished trust in international cooperation and multilateralism as effective tools for peace and security. As peace builders, we understand the imperatives of working at the local and national levels. However, we now need to redouble our efforts to engage more effectively at the international level. The WPS agenda gave women around the world a powerful tool to advance peace in their own societies while strengthening international partnerships, policies, and institutions, what Manjula called pathways for solidarity. It is time for us to use all the lessons learned, the international networks, policy tools, and partnerships we have developed in the last 25 years to resist the world's descent into a new era of violence, conflict, and militarization. Today, more than ever, we need women at the highest levels where matters of war and peace and security are once again decided without us. Let us rejoin forces nationally and internationally for a renewed WPS agenda for inclusive peace and security for the next 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shurgi. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you to our audience for being with us today. Thanks for this opportunity to reflect on the successes, the challenges, the ways we need to improve moving forward. And I want to reflect on the importance of networks. I think I heard this from every speaker, and in particular from Dr. Shurgi in our ending. I think in every study I've ever done in the WPS space, there's always a recommendation around building stronger networks or supporting building connections and solidarity. And I think as we face dark times in the world, I'm brought hope by the fact that there's still folks out there connecting, doing dialogue, working together, trying to be creative. As Dr. Shurgi said, women are indispensable agents of peace. And so how do we channel that new energy that brought us WPS in the year 2000? And how do we channel new energy now to rebuild the space and to think more creatively about expanding our visions of peace and expanding who is included in those visions of peace? I want to close by highlighting some of our resources here. As Dr. Shurgi mentioned, we're coming up on 25 years of doing this work in the world, and the Kroc IPJ is very proud to support women peace builders and work with them in their difficult, their long-term visions for peace. These are the two reports I mentioned earlier at the top of the event that we just launched this month in honor of WPS month and the 25th anniversary. And you can use this QR code to find more of our resources as well, including the intergenerational peace building report that I mentioned earlier. Finally, thank you to all of you for being with us today, for believing in this work, for believing that despite the challenges we have faced in the past, the challenges we are facing now, that this work is worthy, that gender transformation, gender equality, and peace building are fundamentally connected, that we can work together to create a better and safer world for all of us. So thank you so much to our panelists again, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.